What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Today, we'd like to welcome back to the show George Carmi. Welcome back.
What's up, Mason? How you doing, bro? It's good to see you again. I remember, a
Yeah.
couple of years ago we were on together, so it's happy to be back on. Thanks, man.
Yeah, last time you were on February 2022. So
Okay.
I think you were the second guest I've ever had on the podcast,
I love it.
and you are the second guest that I've had twice on the podcast too. So
Perfect. I love it, man.
yeah, it's been quite a journey over the last year and a half or so. But we've got a lot to talk about for this week for the Washington Commanders and training camp. We're going to start off with some unfortunate news. We have to start off on the injury side because, especially towards the end of last week, things really started to pile up for the Washington Commanders. We'll start with David Bada. Again, more of a depth piece at defensive tackle, but I forgot what the injury was, but he's going to be out for the season. I think he tore something in his...
Yeah, he tore his
tricep. Yeah, he tore his tricep, and so he's going to be out for the season. Unfortunate. As well, Curtis Hodges, Logan Thomas, Emmanuel Forbes, Cody Barton, and Sadiq Charles all missed some time over the last week, over like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They all missed some time during practice, which is very unfortunate. And I didn't even add this because I made like the rundown earlier, but Curtis Samuel today, we're recording this on Sunday, it looks like he had a little bit, or he aggravated something in his leg as well. So of all these players, which loss do you think, if one were to miss time, which one do you think would be the most significant?
So real quick, let's touch on David Bada real quick before we dive into the big pieces. So David Bada, man, so torn triceps does not sound pleasant at all. It's unfortunate. He's going to be out for the year, unfortunately. He's a really interesting story. So he basically is from Germany. He's part of the international program pathway. So essentially he doesn't really even count against our 53-man roster anyway. So in terms of like roster building, it doesn't hurt us big picture wise. So I feel bad for him, unfortunately, but it's kind of touching on that program. It's actually really cool. I don't know if you know much about it, Mason, but the way it works is like they'll have like camps like in like Florida, like IMG Academy, and they'll have the international players practice, and then different teams have the option of picking them up. So, unfortunately, we picked him up, I think 2 years ago now. So good for him. Hopefully he'll recover, but in terms of roster construction, it doesn't kill us. In terms of the injuries, man, so wow, it's starting to rack up, man. So I think we're on like day 12 of camp or something like that. Yeah, something like that. And people are getting nicked up, and it's obvious, man. Dehydration, 2-a-day practices, hot as hell outside. Things are getting nicked up. But to answer your question, so like there's a couple like Sadiq Charles. That's very interesting. I think he's definitely one of the top three that are a big concern. Logan Thomas is a big concern, and Emmanuel Forbes. So those are kind of my top three that I'm kind of concerned about. Sadiq Charles, man, he's kind of letting me down. I don't know how you feel about it, Mason. You can kind of think that as well.
I agree. It's been pretty bad.
Yeah, he's supposed to be our starting left guard. I don't think he will be. I think Chris Paul is going to eventually supplant him and take him over. And I think, I'm concerned about him, and it's kind of worrisome. I don't want to get too crazy about it, but like he might go from like not starting to like maybe not even being on the team. Like he's injury prone and he's worrisome. So I am kind of concerned about that. Logan Thomas, I think he has a calf strain or something like that. He's 31. I think that's more like precautionary. They don't want him to get hurt long term because he has been injury prone over the past couple of years. That would be a big hit to our team. But to answer your question, I think Emmanuel Forbes would be the biggest, scariest one if we lost him for a significant time. Because I really do think he's a game changer. Because I think our defense is top 10. It was top 10 statistically. I think it was like 4th in yards, 7th in points last year. Something exceptional. And then now we're like, in my opinion, we're adding, quote unquote, we're adding like a free agent piece in Chase Young, who's fresh, brand new, edge position there, and adding a CB one to an already elite defense. So if he's gone, I think we're kind of worried about like our depth because, Kendall Fuller, St. Juice, they're solid, but at the same time, I am worried. Like, I'd rather have a game changer. I think he can do that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, fortunately for Emmanuel Forbes, I think he was at practice today. He was going through some individual drills. I think he might have been a full participant too. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it does seem like he's going to be A-okay. But Logan Thomas missed his second day, I believe, today of practice, which was pretty interesting. Cody Barton was back, full participant, which is great. I think Barton is kind of like an underrated, not really a lot of Commanders fans are talking about him, but he's going to play a major role next year because it sounds like he's going to have the green dot on his helmet. So he's going to be calling plays in the defense, basically going to be that quarterback for the defense. What are your thoughts on how Cody Barton has performed so far in training camp?
I think he's solid. I think he's essentially like he's a Cole Holcomb replacement, right? He's not going to be. We're not calling on him to be a dominant player, someone that's going to take over the game. We want someone that can contribute and play pretty well. I think he was a solid performer in Seattle last year. I think Cole Holcomb was more athletic than he was. I think Cole Holcomb had more upside, and he had good chemistry with Davis. I'm worried about that. But I think Barton's fine. I think he's going to be a solid piece. I think he can cover pretty well. We haven't heard anything really bad about him. I think the worst thing we heard about him was like a skirmish, like a fight the other day with him. But like in regard to gameplay, he hasn't been a liability. So I think he's going to be pretty solid. So I'm happy with him there, and I think our defense is going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah, for Barton, I actually think, chemistry is going to be that one issue with Jamin Davis and stuff, but beyond that, I think he has a little bit of a higher ceiling than what Cole Holcomb had in Washington. I really liked his play in Seattle, and I think translating over to the scheme, kind of a similar scheme in Jack Del Rio's defense, I think he's going to have a really solid season. Plus, I know interceptions in training camp don't mean everything, but he's had multiple so far in training camp, which has been pretty impressive for a guy who is coming into his first year with this team and learning this defense that Jack Del Rio has. So yeah, that's kind of a good recap of all the injuries so far in training camp. Hopefully this team can stay healthy. We've got the first preseason game this week, which is going to be great. We will recap that at the end of this episode, because I almost forgot that was happening this week. So we will talk about that a little bit later. But that's mostly it for the injuries. Now, kind of going back to Emmanuel Forbes' injury, in response to that, Washington went ahead and signed Jace Whitaker. He's a third-year player, I believe. He was 5 years in college at Arizona, redshirted his 2018 year. He spent time on the Eagles and Cardinals practice squads over the last 3 seasons. He played in 12 games for the Cardinals, and 6 of those coming last year, which he was not horrible. 24 tackles and 3 pass breakups during those 6 games. So what are your thoughts on the signing, and do you think he could possibly make an impact with this team this year, or do you think this is more of a precautionary signing?
I think it's more of a precautionary signing. So we talked about Emmanuel Forbes being hurt today, or hurt, I guess yesterday or whatever. I guess they're off on Saturday. So on Friday, he had a slight groin tweak, and from what I understand, he went out for individual drills and practices, but he wasn't part of the full team participation in the 11-on-11s today. I think Whitaker is going to be a camp body. One thing I love about our team this year, Mason, I'm sure you feel the same way, is our defensive backs are stacked, man. I think it's like I've been saying it on every podcast I've been on. It's like our defensive line is getting all the kudos, and they're probably the strongest point of our team. I think the defensive backs is 1A, man. They're right behind them, and they're really solid. So what I like about Whitaker, his strength, is that he can play in multiple positions. I did some research too. Played some slot, played some outside boundary corners. But in regard to high potential, he wasn't really there. He was a 2-star corner coming out of college. Two-star recruit going into college, and his RAS score really isn't too high. I just think he's more of kind of a practice guy. We have Danny Johnson, Wild Goose, we have Juan Martin, Fuller. We have stacked cornerbacks. But I just think the dog days of summer, people get nicked up and kind of get him out there to get some practice. So that's what I see him at.
Yeah, it was good. 'Cause I was looking for his RAS score and I couldn't find it. So that was good that you just found it. But the corresponding move to this, as again, Washington can only be at 90 players right now. The corresponding move was that Washington did release guard Keaton Sutherland. And Sutherland, actually, I just saw he was an hour ago, he was picked up by waivers to the Houston Texans.
Wow.
So apparently Houston saw
hot
something.
Commodity. What's going on there? Interesting.
And they claimed him off of waivers. So
that
was the corresponding move. But yeah, Jace Whitaker, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to make this 53-man roster. I don't even know if he's going to make it to the 3rd preseason game. I'm not even 100% sure about that. So that's it on Jace Whitaker. We've talked about this a little bit already, but kind of this was the first week in pads for the Washington Commanders, which it's always really fun to watch when you're a fan and when you're there. What was the biggest thing that stood out to you once the pads came on for the players?
So it's I've been to camp twice. When it comes, I want to be like you, Mason. I want to go there every single day, but I've been so busy with work. But I want to get out there. I think the biggest thing, the elephant in the room, is how dominant the defense has been. I think the defense is eating up the offensive line pretty handily, especially the left side of the line. And Sam Cosby's kind of holding his own, but the left guard really isn't doing too strong there. So that is a concern. And I guess we're trying to weigh out. And I think over the next week or so, we're going to start learning more. Is it really the offensive line being really weak, or is it the defensive being dominant? Like, we don't know yet because they've been going against each other. It'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. That's kind of like the big storyline. But some of the positives that I'm taking away is that I like Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell has a lot of attributes to offer. I think he's mobile. I think he has velocity. I think he can throw the ball pretty hard. I think he also has touch on the ball. And we're hearing over and over again that he has a good deep ball as well. So I think that's standing out a little bit. So I think our quarterback has potential. We just got to protect him. Another positive is Chase Young, man. His name's coming up every single day. It sounds pretty awesome, man. He's blowing people up. He's getting by people. I think he's starting to become the real deal again. That's exciting to me. Another thing is Emmanuel Forbes has been disruptive. I like the sound of that. And Jahan Dotson, man, when I was there, he was eating up passes. He's a target hog, so I think he's going to be pretty solid too. So there's definitely a lot of positives. The concern is the offensive line and how dominant the defense is, but that's why we have preseason games. I figured out to see where the holes are.
I mean, Jahan Dotson, I feel like is right now Sam Howell's favorite target to throw to.
I agree.
He's been targeting like every single practice I've gone to. He's gotten most of the catches, or most of the targets at least, that isn't like a dump off to a running back. But Dotson is set for a big year. I think I'm not a bettor. I'm not old enough to bet, but all I'm going to say is I did see his over under for yards was like 900.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
You go over. Okay.
Yeah.
What else do you see, Mason? Now you've been out there every single day. What are some big takeaways you have?
I agree with you. The offensive line has really been pretty not great. It's not been great. But Chris Paul, I've sort of liked what I've been seeing from him, although Ron Rivera did say that he likes where the offensive line is at right now, and he's not looking to add any new people, which I disagree with. I think Dalton Risner has been a name that's come up recently as he visited the Vikings, I think, and recently, but no deal came out of it. Risner could definitely be a name that if I was Ron Rivera, I'd definitely be looking into right now. He's the best guard on the market right now, and he's better than anything that we have right now at left guard. So I'd definitely be looking to that. Like you said, the defensive line has been super dominant. Chase Young specifically. Yeah. I think so in 2021 and 2022, I know some other reporters have talked about this, but he's had this false step and stuff off the snap, which has caused him to lose power when he first makes contact with like the offensive tackle. Yeah. But here in training camp, he's really gotten rid of that. Again, he worked over the offseason with his defensive line coach at Ohio State. So maybe he helped him with getting rid of that false step off the line. But, man, he's looking super dominant. His power and speed combination I would say, is unmatched compared to any other defensive lineman on the defensive line so far in training camp.
I agree. He looks the part. You and I are actively good at practice as we go to games. When you see Chase Young's walking around, he looks like a different type of athlete than anyone else on the field, right? And all we have to do is unlock that potential and let him go. One last thing before we move on to our next topic. The offensive line, I listen to Kyle, I listen to all the big guys as well. The issue is, and I'm with you, I want to get more talent on the offensive line. The problem is they've invested in offensive line talent, but it's kind of more towards the future, right? So let's say you keep 10 offensive linemen. We have our starting 5, right? You have our starting 5, however you want to do. Then you have Chris Paul, Mason Brooks, Tyler Lawson, Ricky Stromberg, and maybe throw Sadiq Charles in or whatever, whoever you think is left guard. You're already maxed out at 10. So it's like you're going to have to maybe potentially cut one of these guys to get someone in. And I mean, maybe they're going to do that. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not saying Sadiq Charles might be in danger, but it's like, let's say Chris Paul becomes a starting left guard, and then maybe Mason Brooks backs him up. So where's Sadiq Charles going to fall? They might get someone else to put him in. We have no idea. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks.
At this point, if things are trending the way things are, like if they continue the trend how they are right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Sadiq Charles doesn't make the 53-man roster. If Mason Brooks keeps on performing at the way that he's done, Mason Brooks, the UDFA, that Washington
Mississippi, I think, for Ole Miss, Ole Miss,
He he's looked pretty solid in one-on-one reps, I think on the Wednesday and then on the Wednesday practice and then on the Tuesday practice as well from the last week. He looked really good. He was pancaking Fidelity and Mathis and stuff. Yeah. It was crazy what he was doing. And again, the offensive line coach was getting absolutely hyped for every time that Mason Brooks went up one-on-one against one of the defensive linemen. So if he continues to impress, and in the preseason game when we play Cleveland on Friday, if he impresses there too, Saahdiq Charles could definitely be in danger of not even making the 53-man roster. So I wouldn't be surprised. Now, we've talked about how this offensive line has struggled against the defensive line. When should the offensive line start to show that they can compete against this defensive line? So I guess the offense in general, because I know the offense in general has struggled against the defense.
Gotcha. I think it's going to be hard sledding for them to compete with our defense. I think our defense is pretty damn good, man. I think our defense is going to be one of the better ones in the NFL. What I'm going to be looking for is how do they look against opposition, right? How are they going to look against Cleveland? How are they going to look against Baltimore? That's going to be really telling. And I hope Washington's reactive because of that, right? Like I think so, like, I don't know if you saw the press conference today, but Ron Rivera was on talking about the Cleveland game, and it sounds like he's not really even going to play the starters that much in this first game, which is like, it's good and bad. Like, I see where he's coming from. He's like, I don't want to get anybody hurt. So we have 4 games, 3 or 4 games to play. We're going to kind of pace it out a little bit, but I want to see the playing time. I want to see some more practices there. What's going to happen is, like, I want them to be reactive though, like, because they're going to basically play Cleveland. I think it's on Friday, and then they're going to practice against the Ravens, I guess, on Thursday and Friday of next week. So within 2 weeks, within about like 10 days, they're basically going to play 2 opposing teams. I think the Ravens practice will be more impactful because the Cleveland game, the starting offense might have like 15 plays, but going against the Ravens 2 straight days, you're going to have hours going against each other. So if the Commanders look pretty weak against the Ravens, we should be reactive and pursue that Dalton Risner like you talked about and things like that. That's where I want to see some growth. So I guess wait and see for another week and a half is kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Again, the Cleveland game and then Baltimore is the second preseason game and Cincinnati is the third. We looking a little bit ahead at the Baltimore one. The Ravens on Saturday, I believe, like Lamar Jackson and all the other quarterbacks, they threw a combined 9 interceptions in practice. That was kind of a crazy stat to see. And if they continue to struggle in terms of throwing interceptions to the Raven, like the Baltimore secondary, in my opinion, I think this Washington secondary is definitely better. And during that preseason game, I would expect to at least start to accumulate some turnovers. That's because turnovers is something that Washington really struggled with last year.
Yeah, I think they ranked 26th or 27th last year. Yeah. And basically, if they can get those turnovers, the fan base is going to go crazy. So if Forbes gets to pick against Lamar Jackson, that's going to be fantastic. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see something like that. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. But so that's pretty much it. First week in pads for the Washington Commanders. I think really the second week and the third week will probably be. It feels like every day is the most important to this point. So every day of practice. 2 more open practices for Washington fans this week on Tuesday and on Wednesday. So I'll be out there. Are you going to be out there for the Tuesday and Wednesday practices?
I'm gonna see what I can do. I think I definitely have to work on Wednesday. Maybe I can sneak out on Tuesday and get out there and practice. That'd be great.
But so Tuesday, Wednesday open practices. But another thing that came up, a little bit of an off-field issue for Washington, which I think was pretty ironic because I know I was listening to Beltway Football and like the day before this information came out, they were praising how Washington was so mature this year and everything. And then Jamin Davis, his plea for his reckless driving back in March 2022. He was driving 114 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone midday. His plea was rejected. So how concerned should Commanders fans be about this situation about Jamin Davis?
I think they should be concerned. I think don't you live in Virginia, Mason?
Yes,
I live in Maryland, but I know I grew up in the area. Virginia doesn't play, man. Virginia does not play when it comes to legalities and driving. Like that's reckless driving. That's jail time. Like I think he is going to be in jail for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. And like my concern is that it's going to be during the middle of the season. And from what from what it sounds like, is the judge does not have any compassion for him either. The judge is like, he kind of feels that he is, not taking it seriously enough, because I believe it's his second infraction, right? It's the second time doing it, and he's also there the day that DeShazier Everett got in his accident as well. So I think that's a concern, because I think linebackers are already thin. Jamin Davis is going to miss some time. How long? Let's say 3 weeks. Yeah, I think it's an overestimate. I think it's gonna be less than that. But let's say he's gone for 3 weeks. That means the first 3 weeks of the season. I think we're playing Denver, Buffalo, I believe,
and Arizona's game 1.
Arizona, Arizona. I'm not too worried about Arizona, but let's say he's gone. That means Cody Barton's the starting linebacker. Khaleke Hudson's the number 2. Like, we're starting to become thinner, like already a thin position. So I am concerned about that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it really matters is how long is he going to have to serve, and when is he going to serve it, because this judge has already he's rejected his plea twice now. So this judge is pretty strict, and I'm not sure if the judge is going to allow him to hold off on his jail time until after the season. I think the judge is going to make him serve it at some point during the season, no matter what. His next hearing is scheduled for August 31st, which again is getting really close now. I believe that's like the bye week in between the final preseason game and week 1. So it's really getting close to where he's probably, if I had to make a guess now, I'd lean towards him missing some time in the regular season, which is tough because, like you said, this linebacker position is pretty weak and doesn't have a lot of depth. So losing Jamin Davis, your former first-round pick, is definitely going to hurt. So, yeah.
100%.
Yeah. All right, so wrap things up here. I didn't have this in the rundown, but we've got thoughts on the Cleveland game on Friday. We've got the Cleveland Browns hosting the Washington. Wait, no. Is it in? Is it at?
Yeah, it's in Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear. The Cleveland Browns are hosting the Washington Commanders. Do you expect to see Sam Howell? Do you want to see Sam Howell in this game, or do you think we should hold off and save him for some of the other preseason games?
I think we should definitely see Sam Howell. I think the more exposure, the better. I want to see him out there. The hardest part is what I'm going to evaluate the most is I want to evaluate the offensive line and Sam Howell the most. That's what I want to see. The problem is I don't want to see Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson too much on the field, because I don't want them to get hurt, because I think they are good enough and we know what we're going to get out of them. So it's hard to have a fair evaluation, because you want to have Sam Howell with the full tools, but you don't want to risk your premier options at the same time. So maybe give him 2 series, maybe a full quarter to get out there to kind of get his feet underneath him, because he needs it. I mean, he needs it. Like, he has 19 passes in the NFL. He only played one other team, and his only NFL experience, I believe, was the Ravens last year during preseason, and then the Cowboys week 18. So it's better to get some more practice out there. I'd be surprised. Ron's very conservative in the preseason too. I'd be surprised if Chase Young's even out there. It might sound kind of weird, but he's going to be resting some starters. So I think it's going to be kind of half and half. But what I would love to see, as a fan, I want to see Forbes out there. I want to see Chase Young out there. I want to see the O line. I want to see Sam Howell. But what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Howell should, again, Ron Rivera, like you said during today's pressers, said that it sounds like they're going to rest a good portion of the starters. I don't think Sam Howell should be considered in that group of starters, even though I think he's going to start week 1, because, like you said, very inexperienced. He needs as much, in my opinion, he needs as much playing time as possible from now until week 1, because once you get week 1, it's it's
game time.
It's game time. Yeah. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I know this. One thing I'm really looking at is the Washington offensive line and their second string offensive line, whatever, the offensive line depth against this Browns defensive line. Because I'm looking at the depth chart now from it. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to play their starters, because I know they have some big names across the defensive line. I don't expect Myles Garrett to play. I'm not sure if Zadarius Smith will play or not. But even beyond that, they in the 3rd round, they selected Siaki Ika out of Baylor, and he's a great run stopper. And I'm wondering, he's more of a nose tackle. So I'm wondering how can this inside offensive line, the guards and center, hold up against a big guy like him, because he's pretty good in my opinion. I had a pretty high grade on him in this last draft class. So I'm hoping that Washington can impress in terms of their offensive line against this Browns defensive line, which really went from from the weakest position group heading into the offseason to now one of their strongest. So, and one of the deepest as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking forward to. Like, obviously you and I love this stuff, and we are going to be watching it with like fine comb, but I think I definitely want to see Mason Brooks. I want to see him at the left guard. I want to see Ricky Stromberg, how he does at center. I want to see, how Chris Paul plays at left guard. I want to see that variation. Left guard is high on my list. Let me ask you a question, Mason. Let's say Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson get a series maybe, and then come right off the field. Would you feel comfortable with Sam Howell still staying on the field with different weapons and with maybe a mix and match on the offensive line? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think you have to. I mean, you're kind of in a position where he's got to get playing time, and even though you have these superstars outside, one of for his main targets, and even though you wouldn't want to play, you want to play the quarterback more than you want the wide receivers, which is kind of a rare instance that Washington is in right now. But I feel like it's unfortunate kind of how he used to play with different weapons and different offensive line. The communication could definitely be an issue, but at this point you kind of have to play Howell for at least a quarter, in my opinion.
And he'll be okay. You got Diami Brown out there, and Pringle's been playing pretty well, so it'll be pretty interesting. We have some good running backs, so I like to see it. It'd be good.
Yeah, he hasn't really thrown to guys like Kaz Allen though, or Mitch Tinsley, who may be coming in at some point as well. So that'll be interesting to see how the communication is there. Also, I do want to point out, you mentioned Ricky Stromberg. Both Stromberg and Gates so far in training camp have struggled a little bit, at least for the open practice that I've gone to. There's been 3 or 4 instances where the snap has been either high or low, or there has been some communication issues across the offensive line, which I hope gets worked out at some point during this preseason. But it is something I'm definitely going to keep an eye on, because it's, again, you don't want the miscommunication issues during the season.
And then, Mason, I know you've been there every single day. You've been there more often than I have. So, Quan Martin, have you seen a lot of him? Have you seen him working getting some reps with the ones, and what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, he's mostly been on the twos. I mean, he's played some of the ones, but again, the secondary is just so stacked that on any other team, I feel like he'd be playing with the ones. Because he's really that good. During one-on-ones against the wide receivers, which happened on Tuesday and Wednesday, he looked really good. He got beat once or twice by, it wasn't Terry or Jahan, it was someone down the depth chart. But beyond that, it was he looked pretty good in coverage as well, and especially during 11-on-11s, his coverage skills are great. And I definitely expect him to play. He's a really perfect fit for this defense and this game and everything. I expect him to play a major role this season, which I'm hoping that he can live up to the role that probably Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio will give him, because I think they're definitely going to use him a lot.
Cool. And then what's your one last one for you, I guess? How do you feel about Sam Howell? You've been seeing him every day too. Do you kind of see him the same way that I do, or how do you feel about him? Are you comfortable?
I'm a little lower on him than most people right now. I'm still open. I still want him to be the franchise guy, but during practice and stuff, some of the accuracy issues, especially the mid-range, 5 to 15 yards, it's struggling a little bit. And again, the deep ball is sometimes there. He's overshot it a few times as well. And his best day came on Thursday, which came against a defense that was only running half speed.
It was a walkthrough. Yeah,
it was a walkthrough. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to see more out of him during the practices this week leading up to the Cleveland game. And I think this is kind of a question for you, and then I'm going to answer myself. But what do you think if Sam Howell does play, let's say, a quarter against Cleveland on Friday? What would you say is a successful appearance from him?
Yeah, gotcha. You want to see him it's going to sound weird because you want to see him getting out of the huddle pretty quickly. You don't want to see him confused out there, right? So you want to see him being efficient, getting out of the huddle, calling the play efficiently. I do want to see keeping the ball safe. I think that's very important. I think with our defense and with our run game, we don't have to depend on him too much. I don't think he has to throw the ball 30 times a game. So I want to see good ball placement. Not a lot of hands on the ball, being quick, decision making. If you're asking me stat line, I want to see I want to see something pretty good. I was like 11 or 14, something along, that type of passing attempts. And I want to see 80, 90 yards. Like, I don't want to see these screens consistently. I want to see chunk yards being played. So I don't have a hard stat line that I'm looking for, but I want to see efficiency, chunk plays, and I want to see good decision making. I think protecting the ball is going to be important. And honestly, when I'm in these group chats and talking to people, I'm more concerned that he's going to have a lot of turnovers this year. I hope he doesn't. I'm thinking double-digit interceptions, and I want it to be less than that. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. We saw again that one interception during the Cowboys game, which I know people love to talk about, the deep shot to Terry or the touchdown on his first NFL career pass. But again, that interception was definitely a very interesting decision from how triple covered in the end zone. So
being a quarterback's hard, dude. You can't just walk. You can't walk. People want him to throw 5 interceptions for the entire year. That's going to be hard to do. You have to, Aaron Rodgers does that. We need people that it's going to be hard. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 10, 12 interceptions this year. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Where can people find you on social media?
Dude, thank you for having me on. I love talking shop with you. I'll come on anytime, Mason. I'm George Carmi. You can find me at Twitter at gcarmi21. I have a Command the Mic podcast on YouTube. Definitely follow that. That'd be awesome if you guys could do that for me. I write for Full Press Coverage, and every Monday, me and Doug and Adam and Neba do a little Monday night, Monday, football talk on Big Doug shows. So I'm definitely on Twitter often. So hit me up.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thank you again, George, for coming on. That'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.